You know, it's too bad they didn't keep Shazam's original name, which was Captain Marvel, because this movie really was marvelous. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another installment in my DCEU review series, where I cover all the DCEU films I've yet to discuss leading up to my review of The Suicide Squad. And today, we're talking about Shazam. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on Shazam were if you've seen it already, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time, and let's talk about Shazam. This stars Asher Angel as Billy Batson, a newly fostered young boy in search of his mother, who instead finds unexpected superpowers, turning him into the hero Shazam, played by Zachary Levi, and soon gains a powerful enemy named Dr. Sivana, played by Mark Strong. This is the 7th film in the DCEU. It's written by Henry Gayden, and it's directed by David F. Sandberg, best known for horror films Lights Out and Annabelle Creation, both of which I enjoyed. And it's the 2nd film in a row after Aquaman to have a horror director take on a non-horror project for the DCEU. And this also continues another trend from Aquaman, and that's placing an emphasis on fun, humor, and having a good time. While there's a heartfelt story at this film's core, this is first and foremost a superhero comedy. The way the movie was described, as I'm sure most of you are aware, is that it's basically a superhero version of the movie Big, a film that I also really enjoy. And that is easily the best way to describe it, which is especially thanks to the casting of Zachary Levi as the title character. Now, I've always been a big fan of Zachary Levi. I feel like he's a talent who's not used nearly enough as he should be. I mean, I know he was Entangled and he had a supporting role in the Thor movies, but if you've ever seen the show Chuck, you'll know exactly what I mean. And this is probably the first time since that show ended where he gets to really show off just how talented of a guy he is. Not to turn this into a comparison video, but in a way, this sees him in his comfort zone and get to do something that's very reminiscent of what he got to do on that show, while still not doing an exact replica of it, or trying to be a carbon copy of what Tom Hanks did in Big. Because in Chuck, it also involved him being an average person who suddenly gains these new powers, similar to Billy Batson here. Though the difference here is, Batson as a normal guy really is a kid. So here, Levi has to react to things even more with this sense of innocence and childlike wonder to him. And here, I think he gets down perfectly the mannerisms of how we as kids imagine ourselves to be as adults. The way he reacts to things would be priceless, where everything's just like, oh my god, that's so cool, and he just gets a kick out of everything, as we see whenever he tests out his superpowers. These would often be some of the film's funniest moments. While there would be some of your usual physical gags that go with some of these superhero origin stories, like he attempts to fly and he falls, him learning his powers in real time would be some of the highlights for me. Like how he goes to stop his store from getting robbed and he realizes on the spot how he's immune to bullets right then and there, and he just holds things up to be giddy over it and try different ways to test it out. The way Levi would gleefully come to these realizations was hilarious, because Billy gets to live out nearly every romanticized aspect of being a superhero, and the way he just relishes in the moment, it really feels like a dream come true. And that's what makes him feel so relatable, probably more so than most of the other superheroes portrayed in film. Unlike all these other big superheroes like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and so on, this is just a normal kid who just gained superpowers. He doesn't come from any mysterious kingdom. He doesn't work for this high-risk job. He's just someone whose backstory is something we can all relate to in some way. Especially when we get down to his arc when he's not being a superhero, which is that, while staying with a foster family, he's looking for his birth mother, who he was separated from as a child. Because the film's major themes are the importance of family and having a place to belong, which again is something we can heavily relate to, even if we're not going exactly through what Billy's going through here. But what I liked was that it was handled in a way that it also didn't regularly resort to just cliched melodrama and arguing. Like, there were times it was definitely there a little, but that also wasn't the crux of how the movie wanted us to feel. Like, you have Billy, who's your typical social outcast, as are his foster siblings, especially Freddie, played by Jack Dylan Grazer, and everyone in this family does try opening themselves up to him and give him this sense of belonging, though he does try keeping his distance at first. But what I liked is, they don't make Billy unlikable in these interactions. Like normally in movies that have handled similar subject matter, it just has our main character unnecessarily lashing out at everyone and everything. But then they're supposed to suddenly have this extreme change of heart. But here, Billy might be a little standoffish and distant, but he isn't openly antagonistic towards everyone. He simply thinks for much of the film that this isn't really his place, and while he knows they're all nice people who mean well, he thinks he should be on his way. And that just makes him a lot easier to be invested in. We still feel what he's going through, but it's also not made incredibly difficult for us to continue caring. Even though there's a bit of tension and he does try to keep his distance, he's not flat out mean. This is a character who has a lot more that allows us to root for him. I also found Jack Dylan Grazer to easily be the other big standout as Freddy, who, as I mentioned earlier, is also this social outcast. And he essentially becomes Shazam's manager, coaching Billy about how to be a superhero. And I liked how he was given a very strong arc as well. He has a disability, he's not able to do much, but he also has a love for superheroes, even more so than Billy, and he lives vicariously through his adventures. And at first, it does allow for a bond to form between the two, as they weren't close prior to this, but it does come to a head, and I liked how it was handled, and it gave way for some nice character moments for both of them. I also thought that the rest of the Foster siblings, who don't play as big of roles, but who do have a fairly strong presence whenever we do get to see them, were great as well, providing a lot of the comedic relief, mainly Faith Herman as Darla, but there was also a lot of heart to them as well, so I appreciated that. And while there was a lot of heart and humor to this, I also do want to mention the action here, as that's usually also important to a superhero movie, and I'd say for the most part, it was solid. There isn't quite as much of an emphasis on spectacle here, as I felt this is really much more of a character-driven movie than an action-driven movie, but for the most part, I liked it. I thought it was all well done and entertaining. But I do want to go back once again, as I mentioned earlier, to the film's humor and overall positive energy. It can be a bit goofy, and maybe the occasional bit of conflict might come off as being handled too neatly, but I just loved the energy about this, and I'd say this is one of the most tonally consistent movies in the DCEU. It would hit all the right beats it was looking to hit on an emotional level, but it was also a film that was focused more on looking ahead and moving forward and trying to keep your head up. Even when characters were going through a rough moment, the others would come to their support and they try getting through whatever the conflict was. And it would get its point across without lingering too much on wallowing in pity, and otherwise it was focused on just having a good time, which I have repeatedly said throughout my reviews of all the other DCEU movies. That's how I want to feel. I want there to be emotion and I want to be able to feel for the characters, but I also want to be able to laugh, be excited, and have fun. And I'd say this film definitely accomplished that. Now, I also appreciate how, similar to James Wan with Aquaman, David F. Sandberg, who previously only directed horror movies, was still given some opportunities here to bring in some horror-like elements, despite being a movie rooted more in fantasy. The way Billy gets his powers is he's brought to a place called the Rock of Eternity, where a wizard, also named Shazam, played by Djimon Hounsou, resides, and previously Dr. Sivana was transported there as a child, but he was deemed not worthy to take on Shazam's powers, and he spends much of the film trying to find his way back to the Rock. And his ventures would sometimes feel a little eerie, mainly as it involved him summoning these demons known as the Seven Deadly Sins, whose powers he controls through something known as the Eye of Sin, and who we'd often see in these claustrophobic feeling close-ups. But even in moments where they weren't around, it would still be a bit chilling. I think the sequence that always stuck out to me was early on, where Sivana has the doorway to the Rock in front of him as he's looking for someone worthy to touch it and get him access, and then someone who works for him innocently touches it and they immediately disintegrate. It's a very quick moment, but it's one that catches us off guard without feeling like a flat-out jump scare, and the imagery was very off-putting, though not disturbing. But it was a little moment that allows Sandberg to at least go back a little into his comfort zone without this becoming a full-on horror movie. He heightens situations based on what he knows best, but not to the point that it causes a jarring tonal shift. Now, to expand further upon Dr. Sivana, unfortunately, I'd say, while he's not bad, he is the film's weakest element. Now, don't get me wrong, Mark Strong does a great job here. He's always a reliable actor, and this is once again another solid performance by him. He felt intimidating, he had a very domineering presence to him, and the fights against him were genuinely exciting. I just say that the character felt a bit one-note. Like I said, he becomes obsessed with gaining the powers of Shazam after he's denied as a little kid. And he makes a point later on saying something to the effect of, "Do you know what it's like to hear that you're not worthy as a child?" And that's understandable. I mean, not that it justifies anything he does here, but that on its own is a good enough motivation for a villain. It's just that there's not too much done with this character to truly make this interesting. Even though the motivation's there, and it's established early on, it still otherwise comes off as this villain with a one-track mind who seemingly has nothing else to his personality. Like, we do know he has issues with his family as well, as seen in the opening, but it's something that's only briefly revisited when we're in the present-day sequences, in a scene that was pretty cool, I will say. And I mean, Mark Strong elevated a lot of the material well. I just think that the writing could have been better and should have justified such a great performance. It's certainly far from the worst written of the DCEU villains, as there is a strong enough motivation. I just wish that it didn't come back to the same couple of talking points over and over again. But that being said, it was still fine. And other than a few small moments where, as I said, things may be wrapped up a bit too quick, I otherwise didn't find much else wrong with this movie. Shazam is a lot of fun, and probably some of the most fun I've had in the DCEU. While still containing its fair share of high-stakes situations, it's also a film that's focused more on having a positive outlook on things, and centers itself more on relatable issues and likable characters, rather than necessarily going for a huge spectacle at all times. It's anchored by a lot of strong performances, most notably Zachary Levi and Jack Dylan Grazer. It's very funny, consistently entertaining, wonderfully heartfelt, and altogether, it makes for one of the DCEU's strongest entries. Shazam gets a 9 out of 10. So that's that. I've now reviewed all the DCEU films that I missed. So if you didn't catch any of my reviews of the other films, I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description so you can check them out. But stay tuned, as up next will be my review of The Suicide Squad. In the meantime though, let me know, did you see Shazam, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you have fun with this one? Do you have a favorite Zachary Levi movie? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.